My friends, this is the Northern Realms review for Homecoming live on the Open PTR. Play gwent.com/open-PTR. Join us right now. Play the game. Leave feedback. This is a crucial time for Gwent. We got to get the tuning right. I think the effects are there. There's nothing really that boring. Northern Realms, huge overhaul. Faction identity for Northern Realms functions around zeal and cards with orders. Both of those things, meaning that cards that care about cards, other cards that have orders, and cards with orders that can be played on the turn that they are playing, meaning that their orders are better and faster in Northern Realms. They also care about charges on units, and this is very important to machines, kind of separate things, but they also function in tandem. Machines, not all of them, but many of them have charges. So I'm paranoid that the music is too loud, so I'm just going to turn it down just a little bit. I'm just paranoid that I'm going to have all this footage and I'm yelling. Giving charges to units and replenishing charges on units. Now, there's lots of units that have charges, but a lot of those units are machines. So you function it's kind of like not necessarily machine-centric, but if you want to play with charged units, you don't have to play machines, but you really can. You also have specters, replacing cursed units. Now, Northern Realms cares about specters. And that means you'll notice on the screen that Draug is a Northern Realms card, because he is actually a really good example of a Northern Realms Spectre. And Draug was a monster card at beginning of Gwent, but Cursed Units for Northern Realms was a flavor piece that they added later into the game. So what a good time to move Draug over to Northern Realms when you have cards like Tormented Mage and Damned Sorceress that really are kind of the same spirit of Draug. Draug, as a spoiler alert for Witcher 2, P.S., play the damn game. Draug is Vandergrift. Makes sense, guys. Draug's also good. Last thing I want to talk about is soldiers as a tribal and units on a row and like a very mix and match kind of way of caring about that kind of stuff Northern Realms cares about. So there's that stuff. Now, Northern Realms, I feel in general, they lack some of the cohesion that you might see in Nilfgaard, but you'll also see that you can mix and match a lot more different units, I think, with Northern Realms. Then you have more freedom in deck building, I think, for Northern Realms, because a lot of their cool cards that have synergy are very low provision, and you can put really cool cards with very cool effects into your deck and still have a lot of synergy with you. I think that's kind of where it is. Also, the Northern Realms leaders are all very strong, and they all can lead almost anything. So I think the main focus for Northern Realms is kind of play how you want, which means that a lot of the effects are about boosting and damaging as well, and a lot of cards care about boost as well. So you see a very kind of jack of all trades from Northern Realms. So let's start with zeal and orders. So let's look at zeal first of all here for Northern Realms. First of all, there is zeal in some of the neutral cards, like Ale of the Ancestors. Actually, this is kind of a bad example because all artifacts have zeal, and I think the fact that Ale of the Ancestors has zeal on its tooltip is just an unnecessary addition to the tooltip, because all artifacts have zeal anyway. But you have Ek. So Ek is an 8 provision cost, 3 strength neutral card that destroys a unit with at least 10 power. But if you have a dragon in your hand, he can do that on the turn you play him, because it's an order effect. So that's just an example of what zeal is and how it can be strong. So let's look at Northern Realms, though, and how they make zeal work. So there are 2 leaders that do zeal very well, and the jury's out on which one's better. But let me tell you, Full Test looks really good. So here's Full Test as a leader. He has his leader order is boost an ally by 1 and give it zeal, which means that every card you play from your hand with an order, if you have Full Test available, you can give it zeal and it can use its ability right away. This is really important for protecting units. This is really important for giving value to units that are vulnerable. And this is really strong as an ability by itself. And they gave him 3 charges, which means that not only can he do this 3 times, but he can also do it 3 times in the same turn. And he has 4 mulligans. I think Full Test on paper is pretty damn strong. I haven't played with him yet. But when I looked at him, I was very surprised. I think he's very, very strong. And you got our boy Henselt, kind of similar, but also very much like Henselt is on live. He's your leader, where his order is play a copy of an allied unit from your deck and give that unit Zeal. So what Henselt does is he does the deck thinning that he kind of always does. Also, if he's playing something with an order, like a machine, which Henselt tends to like, that machine can act right away. So there's a lot of value there. Whether or not this effect is good enough that he isn't allowed to have more than one charge of it, which I think is pretty good, because when you play a unit from your deck, Gwent is currently valuing that at a pretty high rate. So I think that's why he can only do this once. But you also have the Zeal component as well. So this is more of a one-time power play, where Full Test is more about long-term consistency. So play your way. Like I said, Northern Realms is a real play your way feel that I love. I love it. Now let's look at other cards that care about Zeal. Here's your II Sirs, which don't do the same thing. You got a 5 provision cost, 3 strength unit that has an order, damage a unit by 3. It only has 1 reach, so it has to go on melee if you want to hit something on your opponent's side. You can't play this on ranged because it won't do anything. However, if you place it next to 2 soldiers, it has Zeal. But also, if you play it with Henselt, it has Zeal also. Also, Full Test can give this card Zeal. So you have a lot of ways of actually getting full value from this card. Now, 6 overall value for 5 provisions. That is, the jury's out on if that is a good rate or a bad rate, but it also matters if the soldier's archetype gets a better rate on their cards. So there's a lot to consider. Now I'm kind of jumping ahead. This is the kind of card evaluation stuff you really, really need to consider before you say something is good or bad. Please think when you look at these cards, if it's a good rate or a bad rate, and maybe why the decision was made to make a card cost what it does. I believe sometimes, and not in a lot of cases, but in a handful of cases, I think a card is over or under costed, and I'll say so when we go through the cards, because I've marked that down. Because I have notes, you guys. I have lots of notes. I took notes all night. I woke up at 5:45 this morning. I only had a couple days with this before you guys have it. Very much like Homecoming, but unlike Homecoming, this ain't. Boy, I gotta make this clear. This is an exciting time for this game. I truly believe that this should be blowing you away. I think that a lot of people can make a fair case that this isn't the Gwent we've come to know, but I also think that people with a critical eye can see that this is a platform that gives a great future to this game while keeping a lot of important things intact. But I think it had to change. But, let's keep on topic here. We're talking about Northern Realms. Let's talk about charge effects. Now, charge effects matter because a lot of cards with order also have charge effects. Again, Northern Realms has a real play your way style that combines a lot of synergies. So let's look at, let's cover charging and machines at the same time, because a lot of these are the same. Trebuchet is a great example of a card that actually stayed the same spiritually. It's a 5 provision cost, 3 strength bronze unit that has an order to damage 3 adjacent units by 1. However, this removes 2 charges from this unit, but it starts with 2 charges. Now, if you give this card Zeal, it can act right away. That's pretty good. Now, but if you give this card charges, it can repeat its order, but only if you give it 2 charges. Now, surely there must be a unit that gives a unit charges. Surely there must be a unit that gives a unit a lot of charges. Again, much like Nilfgaard, I'm going to show you cards that increase in insanity as we go. But unlike Nilfgaard, this isn't as controversial. But there are some really good cards that function with this. So let's take a look at Siege Support. Siege Support is a 4 provision card for a 2 strength bronze unit that on deploy gives 1 charge to 3 machines. So once you've built your board up with machines, your Siege Support comes in and starts to reload. In addition, you have cards like Old Faithful here, Reinforced Ballista, spiritually the same, a 5 provision card for a 3 strength unit that, on order, damages a unit by 2. It has a reach of 2, which means on the melee row, it can hit both rows for your opponents. And it can do this with 1 charge, which means every time you recharge it, you're pinging. And remember, all charges can be expended in the same turn, but an order can't be used on the turn that you play it, unless, of course, you're giving things zeal, like Full Test and Henselt does. So think about all of these things. Really, really cool synergy. I honestly don't even know where to start, guys. I tried a couple things that I think are okay, but a lot of these levels came from the previous PTR where nothing was like this. The previous PTR set the bar low, let me tell you. And I liked it a lot still. I like the previous PTR, but man, this is... They took our feedback. Don't let anybody say they didn't listen to feedback on the PTR. You can't say that anymore. Almost everything was addressed. Almost everything. I want to make that again crystal clear. Around Homecoming, around other patches, there was the allegation that CD Projekt Red didn't listen to feedback. First of all, this is an open PTR and it's going to last for like 2 weeks. It's going to be a large sample size of stuff, and they've invited your feedback. Use it. Second of all, the last PTR, they took our feedback, and without swearing, I can't make that any more clear. So just, I want to make that really clear. Just want to highlight this awesome card. Full Test Pride, a much maligned card with a much maligned artwork. Not only is Catapult never been a good card, Full Test Pride has never been a good card, but this one's pretty good. Full Test Pride is an 8 provision card with 4 strength, on order, damage an enemy and all enemies with equal power by 1. Ballista still lives as a gold card, and you better believe you want to recharge this one. Man, oh man, is this card good. You want to give this one zeal. You want to give this card multiple charges on your turn you play it. This card can level a board because I'll tell you, a lot of the units are between 1 to 5 strength. It's going to be very easy to groom a board to just run over a board with this card. This card. What is this game? Am I in trouble? What's going on? CD Projekt Red is in my channel, and I'm getting sued. Anyway, so my hands actually are tingling because you guys know I'm like super nervous about this stuff. You gotta know you guys are like super nervous about this stuff. So even like the idea that I could be in trouble is terrifying. Anyway, Ballista's alive and well. Really, really cool. What else? Machines. Siege Master. This is a really important one. 6 provision cost, 4 strength unit. Whenever a machine is played on the same row as this unit, again, a lot of machines can do damage from range. Give it an extra charge. That's good. It's really good. This card's a very, very good card for machines. It's a human, but it's not a soldier. That matters, but it doesn't matter as much. So there's things like that. Reinforced Trebuchet is spiritually the same. That's all I'll really say. And Winch. If we're talking about machines, Winch is kind of back. I think this is a card that'll see play. This is a 6 provision special card that plays a bronze machine from your graveyard. It's a special card, but it brings machines back, which means that, you know, decks that really want to play machines a lot and are playing stuff like Henselt to get machines out of the deck and want to play machines in multiple rounds and want to make use of charges in a lot of rounds, this gives you a second chance with those cards. And I think it's fairly costed. So I think Winch is pretty cool. So that's good for machines. Let's talk about Spectre. What's up, Alias Fee? Let's talk about Spectre. Sorry, I want to get through this stuff. I'm going to talk to you guys later, and we're going to go through everything later for a more traditional stream, because I'm streaming for a very long time. We got takeout last night, which means that I already have leftovers for lunch. So we're going to have lunch together. We're going to talk for a long time. Let's talk about Spectres. Now, I've already given my feedback to CDPR about Spectres right now. I feel like Spectres could use some more support, because there's not a lot of the cards. But the Spectres do care about other archetypes, so there is that at the same time. They also have some really cool effects. and effects that care about minimal units on the board. So that's kind of important too. So I can see the direction that they're going, but at the same time, I think that they could use maybe 1 or 2 more cards for support, but that's what expansions are for, my friends. Expansions. What's this? This just says like missing stuff. So you can look at the images and you can draw your conclusions, but I think these are just placeholders. But let's look at the specters. So we'll start off with the GWENT Revenant, which is spiritually the same card, just to use it as an example. Of 5 provision cost, 3 strength unit that damages an enemy by 1, and if that unit was destroyed, spawn a copy of itself on this row, which means that this unit can now do it again. So spiritually, this card is a card that copies itself every turn, much like it did for Cursed NR. But it doesn't really work with playing special cards because you have less tutors for special cards, and you're probably running less special cards, and you probably are running soldiers, which this is, and you probably care about tribal specters, which this is. It has a good amount of reach, and it also has an order, which cares about zeal. So there's that. It also cares... now, I don't think a card without charges can be charged up more than 1. So I think that refreshing the order is different than giving a unit a charge. So just so that's clear. So this is a card that can use its order multiple times under certain conditions, but it gets its long-term value from reproducing itself. Now, this also means that it creates a swarm effect by itself, which is probably another reason why you don't want to maybe give Northern Realms too many specters. I think that's probably by design with a card like this, because this makes a lot of specters. It also makes a lot of units on the row, and there are cards in Northern Realms that care about how many units are on the row. So there's a lot of synergy with this card. Again, when evaluating this card, when you're evaluating the archetype, look at that. So that's why I'm not 100% sure that specters don't have enough support, because a lot of cards care about how many specters are on the board. Cursed Knight is another card that makes more specters. It also means that you have a unit that makes specters out of non-specters. So it encourages you to run non-specters in a specter deck. So spiritually, again, very much the same. This is an 8 provision card, so this is one of the most expensive bronzes in the game at this moment. Like I said, we saw the Runestone at a 7 provision cost that creates a bronze unit within your faction at a 7 provision cost, which means that it can create a lot of stuff from 4 to 6, so you get a bad rate on it. But you do get a 3rd copy of it if you want that. But there are cards at an above rate, which Cursed Knight arguably could be, but you don't necessarily want this card, nor does this card necessarily give you great value if you get it out of a Runestone and you're not playing a Spectre archetype. Again, just one of the same, because I think every faction, I'm going to say, the Runestones may look scary, but they're not scary because of this reason. So Cursed Knight, again, is a 7th direct unit that transforms a non-Spectre ally into a copy of this unit while keeping the same power. Keeps the same boost as well. I've tested it. Boost, damage, nothing changes, nothing resets. It's the same power. And now you've got the cool cards. By the way, I need to revisit charges because I forgot to show you some of the best charge cards. So sorry, this is going to be out of order. Now you've got the cool cards. Forbidden Magic is a special card that's 6 provision cost that damages an enemy for every Spectre on your side. And you also have Sabrina's Inferno. Deal damage to every non-Spectre unit by 1, and if any of them were destroyed, do that again. So this works on 2 levels. 1, this is a board wipe that Swarm does not want to see you have in your deck. Let me tell you. This hurts Erica's Queen a lot, this deck. This card. Also, this effect is on a neutral card as well, so if you love this ability, but you don't want to play Northern Realms, you can still do it, because Regis, as a neutral card, has a similar effect. But Sabrina's Inferno is actually much stronger without a body, believe it or not. Because not only do you start putting a huge amount of damage on your opponent's side of the board, you're also probably playing a lot of cards that can groom the board to make sure that you can get a maximum amount of effect from this card. You could potentially also have non-Spectre units on your own side of the board that are at 1 strength. That means that while you'll lose a non-Spectre card on your side of the board, you will trigger this more than once for your opponents, who maybe has a 2 strength unit on the board, which means it's going to trigger again, and maybe the rest of your units are specters and don't care. Finally, you made a lot of specters, and you changed a lot of non-specters into specters. So again, if you think that specters don't have enough support, this card demands evaluation. I still think maybe you could use one more, but this card is strong. This card is really strong. Damned Sorceress is a specter, but not a card that cares about specters. But it is a card that cares about the row. It's an interesting one. I don't know if this one's going to see play, but we'll see. It's a 4 strength card. Sorry, it's a 4 provision cost card. So it's at the lowest end. It's your weenie for the deck for specters. It's a 1 strength unit that is a Death Wish, actually. The only Northern Realms card and one of the very few non-monster cards that has Death Wish. But the Death Wish is actually really cool, and I think it's kind of monstrous. So you can kind of make this synergy here. Also, Arena cares about this. Death Wish boost all units on this row by 1. Again, Gedwene Sergeant cares about that. And there are other cards that care about how many cards are on the row. So this card is an interesting one, in that if you want to run stuff like Crow's Eye, you can trigger this more than once. And maybe you have a long round that just really assembles itself well. And you can get a lot of value out of this card. Cards that affect all things on the row, spoiler alert, those cards come at a very high rate in this game now. These are cards like Zoltan. Sorry, these are cards like Lacerate. These are cards like Golden Froth, which is a 9 provision cost spell. So to get this effect on a 4 provision card makes this a card to look out for. I think that this card could see play, and even if your opponent removes it, you're going to get the effect. So this card demands locks, or you can get a lot of value out of it. Plus, it's a Spectre. But because Spectres are so damn cool and there's not a lot of cards to look at, I'm just going to show you Drow. Sorry, I just got to take a sip of water. It's a lot of talking, my friends. We've been talking for a long time. Draug is gaining a charge for each ally Spectre when you deploy him. He is a 13 strength card, but he has a 7 strength body, which is super resilient. There is not a lot in the game that can take down 7. So Draug comes into play with an order, but again, you can maybe give him Zeal. He deals 1 damage to a unit, and you can charge him for each allied Spectre on the board. So when you drop this on the board with 4 Spectres on the board, he gets 4 charges. Plus, you also can add charges to him. And a reminder, he can play all of his charges on the same turn. And as another reminder, you got a card that cares about 1 strength units on your opponent's side of the board. I think Sabrina's Inferno and the cards that ping and Spectres in general have a lot of potential. And this is probably where Northern Realms is looking to control. Because control has a lot of different ways to play based on the faction you're playing. And Spectre control, because you also have very few units, you have cards that care about low amounts of units, and you have cards that care about certain creature types. Spectre control. Oh, and I didn't even show you Ada. Throwback to old school Radovid. In case you didn't think that they wanted Cursed or Spectres to be control-y, you can run Ada, and you get an 8 damage effect in your back pocket. This is an extremely powerful effect, because what did I just say about Draug? 7 strength is actually a really high body type when you have a card that demands removal. Ada can remove a card that demands removal almost all the time. Just for an example of what this is valued at, 8 damage, I'll show you Becker's Rock Slide. Becker's Rock Slide is a special gold card that has the same effect, damage unit by 8. This is a 9 provision cost card. So not only can Ada do that, Ada also has 3 mulligans. It's pretty good. But she only has a 1-time leader ability. So if you go up against a control mirror, let's say, against Nilfgaard, this doesn't hurt you as much because you're not really tribal, but you're still playing towards your tribe's, the thing that your tribe cares about, which is control. So I think that the way they've approached this and the way they've approached Control in Northern Realms, the way they've approached Spectres, the way they've approached Ada, and the way they've actually approached the Control Mirror when you look at Usurper versus this card, and how a deck that's built around this card might care about the leader, which is a little, but not much, is honestly, guys, I don't want to sound like a super fanboy, but this is one of the most brilliant things so far. This is a brilliant thing. Matchups. Okay? I hope I've made that point clear. Like, I hope you get what I'm trying to say there. Because, again, Usurper disables the opponent's leader. I just think that they're really putting a lot of thought into the design of this game, which is... We're not done yet. We got one last thing to show you for Northern Realms. It's probably the least exciting thing, and that's the Soldier archetype. But I'm also going to show you some of the really cool soldiers and charges and stuff. You have cards like Siege Tower. Oh, La Vegetaliana, you don't understand. Yes, you do. You've seen me going crazy for the last couple of days. La Vegetaliana knows it more than anybody. Hi, La Vegetaliana. I'm glad I looked at the chat because I haven't been looking at the chat. Give it up for La Vegetaliana, everybody. Horns in the chat, my friends. Siege Tower cares about soldiers because it boosts soldiers adjacent to this unit. Also cares about charges. Also cares about zeal. Also cares about machines. There are a lot of cards like this in Northern Realms. Like I said at the beginning, very play your way, build your synergy, choose your tribes. You have a lot of support. Northern Realms does this better than almost every other faction, except for maybe Scoia'tael. Scoia'tael has a lot of really cool tribal stuff too. Now, while that's, I mean, you could take that, you could look at it from two ways. Do you want Scoia'tael to be really the tribal faction? Yes and no. Because when it comes to Arena, you do want cards that care about other things that factions care about. So Northern Realms also crosses this boundary with Scoia'tael when caring about boost. It also crosses this boundary when comparing it to Wild Hunt, because Wild Hunt cares about soldiers, and Northern Realms cares about soldiers, I can say. So you might draft soldiers. And then you have cards like Immune, where Scoia'tael and Monsters both have immune cards. So there's kind of like, you could see like certain factions share a side subtype in stuff that they care about. Like, you know, the tactics and stuff like that, soldiers, charges and zeal, orders and stuff like that. Really, really cool how they do that. So Arena, while it's not implemented in the game, there's a lot of forethought put into that. Also, you know, Skellige and Nilfgaard both have machines and stuff like that. So Arena is like looking much, much better, because imagine an Arena, you're choosing between 3 cards that all have the same provision cost. Let's also say that in each Arena run, you get the same provision cost to fill a deck. So you should get, it's all about outvaluing, because your deck should be roughly the same in power to your opponent's deck, but the way you build synergies is so much more important. I didn't like Arena so much in Gwent Live. I've been on record saying that I wasn't super impressed and I didn't find it all that fun when compared to constructed play. Arena sounds very fun if that's what they're doing, and I do not know if that's what they're doing, because we haven't tested that yet. So that's just looking at Siege Tower alone. That's the rant I just went on. But let's look at some cool stuff here. Let's look at a cool stuff. Vandergrift's Blade. I've talked about Create. Sorry, I'm just going to address this in the chat. Talked about Create a bit so far, but the overarching thing about Create is that Create is priced in a way that usually you're getting below rate at the benefit of creating maybe a third card that you want more than 2 of, or perhaps a tribal synergy that you want more of, like Soldiers or Wild Hunt or Spectres or whatever. But it's priced fairly high, and sometimes the random nature of it, considering that there are so many, you know, low-cost cards in a pool of cards, the risk is there. So I think the Create is probably fine. Also, I find that a lot of the techs are in the neutral pool of bronze cards, and that, you know, while there are some, you know, create a solution cards, in that there's a Northern Realms card that destroys an artifact, so you don't need a neutral card that destroys an artifact. So if you need to create a battering ram, which that's what that card does now, a battering ram, I believe, is a 5 provision. I can just look at it right now. I'm going to go back to Vandergrift's Blade. But just to use an example, a battering ram. Oh Battering Ram is a 5 provision cost machine that has a 4 strength body that destroys an enemy artifact on deploy. So Battering Ram is a card that machines will be happy to play. Winch, which brings a machine back from the graveyard, would be happy anyway because you actually get flexible tech now. You don't need to res this, but you could. It's also tech because it's fairly low cost because the neutral artifact destroyer is less than this for the same body. And it's a machine, and you can do stuff with Zeal and stuff like that. So Battering Ram is an example of a card you could create potentially for an answer that could go into your graveyard that then your Winch could care about. So there are instances where you might get a great create, but it's priced in a way that I'm not positive people are going to want to make room for it in their deck. This is, again, really important for the feedback. And yeah, Create should be on everybody's watch list because Create was one of the most despised things in Gwent. I will talk about Create. I'll type Create into the search bar after we're done with the factions, okay? But just so you guys know as an overview. So we looked at soldiers. Soldiers people care about. We talked about Jack of all trades. I just want to show you some of the really cool cards that care about charging. There's 3. That's Reynard. No, I'll show you 4. Reynard, Taller, Bloody Baron, and Vernon Roach Merciless. So where's Reynard Odo from Thronebreaker? It's Reynard Odo. There he is. So Reynard is a 12 provision cost, 5 strength unit that whenever a unit with order and charge is played, give it a charge. So that's pretty good. It's a little bit different from the other card that did this, which is Siege Master, in that it is more resilient and it cares more about order. I'm wondering if it's too much the same. Actually, let me just check this. 10 provision cost for a 5 strength body. It gives an extra charge to a unit with order. But we were looking at Siege Master with this, which is, well, it's only a machine. So that's the difference. Siege Master's only for machines. Reynard's for any unit with order. So there's your difference. There's your evaluation. You can evaluate these 2 cards and actually really understand where value is being put in provisions. Really, really great comparison card for you. If you want to play along in the deck builder, that's Siege Master and Reynard Odo. But let's talk about Taller. Taller. This is a really, really cool card with charges. 6 strength. 6 provision cost, 5 strength unit. When you deploy it, remove all charges from an enemy and give it to this unit. And then, as an order, which you can do with Zeal, but you can definitely do the turn after, give however many charges you stole to another unit. And you can do that all in one turn because charges activate all of them in one turn. So not only can you give a unit that needs a lot of charges, and there are cards that care about that, but you can also distribute all the charges among a number of different machines and then get a crazy turn. Really, really cool card for Taller. Also, just as a quick overview, we saw Falibor. This is just a quick side. Falibor is a melee unit, 10 provision for 3 strength gold that destroys an enemy with order on the melee row. Can only do that if placed on the melee row, but can do it to any unit. So that's like kind of, not only does Northern Realms love orders, but they have counter orders and counter charges like Falibor, and also like the Dun Banner Heavy Cavalry. This is a really cool tech card for the meta. 4 provision cost, so it's very cheap. It's a knight. So that's tribal, although knights don't have a lot of support, just so you guys know. But it's still tribal. Humans have more support than knights. We saw it with Black Rayla on the dev stream. It's a 4 provision card for a 4 strength unit, so it's already getting a good rate as far as neutral cards are concerned. So even if you have to play it and it whiffs or it's dead, you didn't really lose too much by having it in your deck. So maybe it's a 1 of, maybe it's a 2 of, meta choice. Deploy. Remove all charges from an enemy and then damage that enemy by the amount removed. So it's very counter. So in a Northern Realms mirror, real good card. Now, this 4-point provision card can drastically hurt the insane charge cards, like Bloody Baron, for 1. Bloody Baron is a 10 provision cost unit with 4 strength that, on order, again, matters with Zeal, but is slower. On order will double an ally's charge. Okay, now why would you want to do that? Well, we've already talked about a card that can just unload all its charges and do crazy damage. But what about a card that is building charges that doesn't even care about damage? What about a card like Vernon Roach Merciless? Oh man. Now this is a card that should be scary when Northern Realms has made great charge setup. This is an 11 provision card, 4 strength unit with order. So again, vulnerable, but Northern Realms is all about that Zeal. So you know Northern Realms is going to get this off on first, like when you play it. This effect is going to go off if you've, it's a gruesome piece of art too. This effect is going to go off if you set up properly. So this card starts with no charges, but when you order Vernon Roach Merciless, he will seize an enemy whose power is less than or equal to this unit's charges. And not only is this card good, because you can put charges on it, but every turn, he gets a charge passively. And there is potentially no ceiling on what Vernon can take. This card, Vernon Roach Merciless, went from being as close to literally unplayable card, as close to as actually saying that with it being true, although I hate using the term literally when it's not literal, but as a exaggeration point, as the kids may say, this went from being literally unplayable, as in a terrible card on live Gwent, to one of the most interesting cards Northern Realms has, and also one of the scariest cards that you might have, because remember, full test can give any unit Zeal, and boost it to make it safer, right? Demavend also gives a charge to a unit every 2 turns. So you could play Demavend with a deck like this too. Vernon Roach is awesome. Actually awesome. Somebody asked about Lubberkin Botchling. I'm going to show it. Now, Lubberkin Botchling is a Northern Realms card, but isn't a Spectre, but is cursed, but a lot less cards care about cursed. So it's not really a cursed card, but man, is it a cool card. Lubberkin Botchling is a 9 strength, 5 strength unit that starts as a Botchling. Every turn, on turn end, damage the enemy with the highest power by 1. That's Yen Conjurer stuff. On order, transform this unit into Lubberkin, which is the same card, 5 strength unit, but every turn on turn end boosts the ally with the lowest power. So whatever you need this card to do, it can do it for you. And there's a lot of cards that care about boost. So getting the Lubberkin on your side and getting a card like Tridem Infantry, because I'm showing these cards because it really segues into what I'm trying to say. Tridem Infantry is a soldier, which matters, a 4 provision card at 3 strength, which is decent for an effect like this. Whenever this unit is boosted, damage an random enemy by 1. This means that if there's any orders on the field that boost, you're getting a ping. If there are multiple orders on the board that boost, you are getting a lot of pings. And this is a cheap card, dudes. Don't worry about low, cheap cards being uninteresting. This, again, is one of the most interesting cards for Northern Realms. Soldiers, boosting, and charges. Play your own way. Really, really awesome synergy. Northern Realms is so synergistic in different ways. I absolutely love it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about for Northern Realms, because I've covered almost everything without going into every single card, and again, I will go into every single card in this client after this podcast, quote unquote. But I want to show you one more thing, because Northern Realms as a faction cares about spells, in that Northern Realms has the faction tutor for spells, as Nilfgaard has the tactic faction tutor, and Monsters has the organic faction tutor. Kira is the Northern Realms faction tutor for a spell. Now, unlike Menno, sorry if I said Stefan Skellen, unlike Menno on the Nilfgaard side, and unlike Wispus Tribute, or Wispus, I think maybe is just known, Wispus now, which has 2 strength on the body. This is a 10 provision card that has 1 strength on the body, but spells are much stronger because spells are things like Scorch And when you're playing stuff like, if you're playing Control,
You're
that
here.
matters.
I'm here.
This is my hosting alert, my friends.
Let's do this.
Thank you very, very much. DeMorcus, you sent a little raid my way. Thanks, my friend. I want to say again, thanks to all the subs, follows, and everybody following along. That is my sub alert. I'm leaving it in the stream. I don't care. But thanks, DeMorcus. You probably didn't mean to do that, and I also don't think my threshold is set that low, but it's good to know that you're in the channel. I think that's worth it. So Northern Realms doesn't have a lot of spell synergy, but they gave you Kira because Northern Realms Control looks like it's going to be Ada, and it looks like it's going to be Specters. But let's just kind of look at spells and what cards in Northern Realms that care about spells. As you can see, there are not many, but there are some important ones. Forbidden Magic, like I showed, which damages an enemy by 1 for each Spectre on your side. So I think this card is over budget, personally, but it's a Spectre-based card, and you can make a lot of Spectres, and it's Control. So that might be it. And Sabrina's Inferno is a spell that, boy, oh boy, do you want to have more reach to play, because this spell's going to be psychotic, okay? So Kira makes this, just Kira alone, makes Spectres that much more legitimate. So that's where this card, I think, is going. But let's look at the neutral spells, because that's also really important. Also, the neutral cards that care about spells. So you got Alzur's Thunder, 6 provision, damage by 5. That's where that card is. You've got locking effects like Artifact Compression, which is a reset and a lock now at 7 provisions. You have cards like The Last Wish, which looks at the top 2 cards from your deck, plays one, and banishes the other, which is really cool, because that's kind of what Last Wish does. But you can do that, of course. But this is any spell, guys. This is tutoring any spell. So there's a lot of really crazy spells. And Marvin's Blue Dream plays any unit from the opponent's graveyard. Any unit. Becker's Dark Mirror. I'll show this one because this card is just sick. This card is just cool. 7 provision cost card for a spell. Choose a unit. If it's boosted, damage it by 2 times the amount it is boosted. And if it's damaged, boost it by 2 times the amount it's damaged. What a cool card. What a cool spell. And I should also tell you, there's other cards that care about special cards, which aren't just spells. So this is also relevant. Also, you'll notice Alzur's Double Cross, same. It's the same card. 10 provision cost plays the unit with the highest power from your deck. Tutors exist in Alzur's and Marching Orders as they do. They don't give you a boost, but this is actually a very valuable and well-priced effect that can give you the consistency you need, but you're paying for it. Good job, Gwent. I just want to say good job on this aspect, in case you missed that. Renew is play any unit from the graveyard, which is neutral. But I also just want to look up special, because there are cards that care about special. So if you are playing a spell-based Northern Realms deck, you might be playing a lot of special cards too, because you might be into Control, like Alzur's Thunder, Becker's Rock Slide, Ada, the Forbidden Magic. So you'd also be playing cards like Johnny and Sarah, who are friends now. Johnny and Sarah function very similarly. Johnny's a 6 provision point card with 3 strength. It damages a unit by 2 and gains 1 charge when you play a special card. What's that? More intra-Northern Realm synergy? Charges, my friends. But then you also look at Sarah, who is grayed out for some reason, which means that maybe it's broken right now. Sarah is kind of the same card. 6 strength for a 3 strength unit that boosts a unit by 2, that gains 1 charge whenever you play a special card. So Johnny does the damage, Sarah does the boosting. They're both charge-based cards. They both care about special cards. Northern Realms has charge-based synergy. Northern Realms has a spell tutor. And Northern Realms is likely to have a very strong special card-based control archetype in Ada. What more do you want from a design standpoint? They did a good job with Northern Realms. And again, all the stuff I said about control mirrors against Nilfgaard stands as well. I really think they paid really close attention. The only thing you got to worry about is if these cards are undertuned or not. Don't worry about the effect being too strong. worry about, is the deck going to look good and feel good? And I think Spectres is going to look good and feel real good. And it might be my Northern Realms go-to. But that's Northern Realms right now. But first, I want to quickly go through the list of cards that didn't change spiritually very quickly in Northern Realms. There's a few, starting with a big one. I'll show this one first. I was going to do bronzes first, but I'll show this one first. DJ Dijkstra left with the Redanians, but his effect lives on. Vernon Roach going behind enemy lines, calling in the troops. 12 provision cost for a 3-point spy. Deploy. Play the top 2 cards from your deck. The card lives. The card is good. The card is priced well. 3 is still pretty high, considering Dijkstra is 4 in live, and the cards that Dijkstra can pull is like 15 damn points or whatever. 14, 15 points. The fact that Vernon is still 3 when everything is lower to the ground means that the effect was nerfed. Let's make this clear. And it's highly priced. But I still love it. I still love it. Vernon is my boy, and this card is legit, and I love it. I really wanted to show you guys that one. So, but everything else. So, as far as cards that didn't change spiritually, Kidwinny Knight works the same. Kidwinny Knight works the same way, being boosted when coming from the deck. Reinforced Ballista still pings for 2 and is a machine. You can charge it up, really cool. Trebuchet still pings adjacent units by 1. Kidwinny's Revenant still duplicates itself in some way. The Rivian Pikeman is a spiritual successor to Battering Ram in that it gets an extra ping if it destroys something. The Runestone, again, we talked about create, but we talked about Runestones being budgeted at 6. Generally, bronze cards top out at 7. Viper Witchers being very, very high on that list. And what card was it? Cursed Knight also being very high on this, being at 8, I think. 7 or 8, so you can high roll. But those cards are probably where you're high rolling with the create. And I think generally you're creating something at a low rate and praying for synergy. But the thing about Northern Realms is, once again, Northern Realms cares about special cards. They have a really, really easy way to get synergy because all their cards cares about soldiers, charges, orders, zeal, God, machines. So you're going to find something that matters to Northern Realms. So I think that the Zoria Runestone in particular is one of the better ones because Northern Realms has the synergy just in the bag. Reinforced Trebuchet spiritually is the same card pinging every turn. Blue Stripe Commando is a thinning card, so spiritually it's kind of that card still. Margarita still locks a unit, so you can expect the same thing from her. No more Reset. Reset is more of an Nilfgaard thing now. We didn't really talk about that very much, but it is. Full Test Pride spiritually is very similar to the current Ballista. Ballista is a great card in live, and this is a much more stronger and dangerous version of the card, hitting things at the same threshold of power. Ronvid the Incessant spiritually is the same. When you play him, he's strong. When he comes back, he's less strong. But he comes back from the graveyard any round you need. And he cares about soldiers. He also cares about boosting if you can retrigger the deploy effect somehow, and I think there's a way you can do that. But also, he boosts on turn start, so anything that cares about boosts, you get that trigger immediately. So boost triggers are important for Northern Realms and Squirtle in Arena. That's important too. Cursed Knight, spiritually the same, copies itself to another unit. Selkirk, spiritually the same, duels an enemy unit, which means it's a 10 provision card now with 5 strength, and the duel is an order, which means you can't use it the turn you played it, but again, you get a lot of zeal effects. Full Test can use it 3 times. Selkirk is going to take down some cowards, I'll tell you. Kira Metz, spawning a spell is... I put it in here just because I think I just wanted to show you the tutors were alive and well, and Vernon as the DJ Dijkstra effect. There's Northern Realms, my friends. Keep watching the stream. We will be going through every single card in this client. This is just an overview. We're going to wrap this one up. Thanks for watching, guys. We're going to move on to Skellige. Skellige. Jobble G, is asking in the chat, is there any armor in the game? A very good question. The answer is no, actually. Even though we saw it in previous Homecoming footage, I don't think there's any armor in the game. So I spelled armor. Oh, I just spelled it wrong. So I put in Armo. So that's Armored Cavalry, Armor Smith, and Warmonger also has Armo in it. So that's why you're seeing that. Now, the reason why I think that this is a good thing is because I think that armor is still going to be something that is in the game, and that maybe however Radovid's coming back with those Redanian elites and other cards that care about armor, I think that's going to actually just be a different factions mechanic. But that's why I think it's a good thing. It's a bad thing because it's a cool mechanic, but it's a good thing because I think it's coming back. So that's just an overview on armor for Northern Realms. Now we're going to wrap it up and move on to Skellige. Great question in the chat. Skellige's Glory. Great question, and I'm glad I caught it. Sorry if I haven't caught other questions. I'm just trying to move through this because this is a lot of talking. It's going to be a really long podcast, my friends.